Hey everyone, my name is Dhruv and I'm a second year student here at SFU. And well, I love video games. From playing them, to watching other people play, to reading theories, and talking to people in the comments, even arguing with them from time to time. Just everything about it gives me joy. So I thought, why not just make my video on the things I love? And well, on that note, here I am. In this video, I aim to discuss participation as Rheingold describes it, through the lens of the gaming community at large, mainly focusing on fan games, but also briefly touching on the concept of Let's Plays. A little note before I begin though, a lot of this video will be looking at the environment around fan games, things like intellectual property and how companies treat those when it comes to these fan-made projects. I'll be highlighting examples later on in the video to showcase this kind of dynamic. And I am doing so because I feel like if I were to talk about fan games as being a form of participation that has a slightly higher bar of entry because of the skill set required to make these games, I'd be ignoring something very important. It would almost be like if I were to talk about breathing without actually considering that the lungs play any kind of role at all. And well, on that note, as Philip DeFranco would say,
Let's just jump into it.
video games by themselves are a form of media that wholly depend on user interaction. Interaction in any way, shape, or form is actually needed when it comes to completing a video game from start to finish. However, as a player, beyond just interacting with the game itself, there is a lot of enjoyment to be had when you participate with the community, whether it be in the form of fan art, forum posts, live streams, let's plays, or hell, even if you've been leaving comments or taking part in those live streams, you're a participant. Welcome to the club. I'll be talking about let's plays more later, but for now, let's get to the focus. The fan game. Uh, a fan game, well, I really don't have to describe it. It's pretty self-explanatory in the fact that it's a game made by a fan. It really doesn't get easier than that. So is that it? This has been my video. Thank you guys so much for. No, I'm kidding. Fan games are actually super important to me and super important to the community at large because they're at the forefront of a very heated debate that calls into question what exactly is an original game? What comprises as original or creative? And this is most likely the case because even if the fan game might be made by independent developers who have their own ideas and share it by making their own projects, they still oftentimes end up basing their stuff off of the main games, oftentimes using the same source code, same names, but the creative expression of it might be different, which is where they differ from the main original game. Case in point, the Pokemon fan games. Having been part of the Pokemon community for so long, I'd be lying if I said I didn't play my own fair share of these fan games and had fun while doing so. Thankfully, the community seems to agree with me on that. They all seem to love these games and say that a lot of them are actually really well made. There are two kinds of games under this community. One, ROM hacks. These games use the original main series game source code and change it completely. They add their own dialogue, their own characters, sometimes their own Pokemons, and even new power dynamics from time to time to make the game more interesting. The only thing they share in common is the fact that they're all under the umbrella of Pokemon. The other kind of fan games under this community are original games. They differ from ROM hacks in the fact that they're built from the ground up like you'd expect a main series game to be. These games are harder to find, fewer of them exist after all, but also they're all free. It's an odd concept, but these fully developed games are free to download because the developers of these games don't prioritize monetary gain, they just prioritize their love for the community and the franchise as a whole. Let's talk about one of these fan games for now. Pokemon Uranium was a game that was released in the year 2016 after being in development for 9 years. In its first week of release, it got 1.5 million downloads, which is a staggering amount for any kind of fan project. But we weren't the only people who were seeing these numbers. Nintendo caught wind of this and took down the game not long after. And The entire fan base was shook. We did not know how to react to this kind of takedown, and the developers were heartbroken, understandably so. They had to shut down their website and cease all further development, bug fixes, and the like that come with developing a game like this, a project so expansive. But why is it? Why is it that myself and many others see these kind of games and projects as being original, but the law doesn't see eye to eye with us on that? Well, this is most likely the case because games like Pokemon Uranium use their own storylines, their own sprites, their music, their maps, and everything, but they still make the mistake of using names and characters that are affiliated with the companies that the main game is based off of. Nintendo owns the rights to character names like Pikachu. They also hold a trademark of the term Pokemon, which means that in just simply using the term Pokemon, Uranium commits a trademark infringement. It may have its own Pokemons, 150 of them, a completely new world, totally original characters, and a storyline that deals with things like death, something that the Pokemon main series games would never really tackle head on because of the fact that their intended audience is children. And yet, the game couldn't make it because of the fact that it infringed on the trademark of the term Pokemon. And that sucks. More on Pokemon Uranium and fan gaming culture as a whole is discussed in a video that I'd like to cite as my inspiration for making the video you're watching right now. It's one that's posted on the Game Theorist channel, and I've linked that in the description below. It's a great watch. I honestly recommend it. It's not very, very long, and it discusses some pretty important things regarding how laws have changed over time to encompass fan culture and where it could be going when it comes to fan games. In the video, the host MatPat actually says something that strikes a little too close to home. He says copyright law is getting tighter around these things at a time when gaming culture is looser and more exploratory than it has ever been. A lot of the developers in the fan community would agree with this kind of statement. But that's in the case of corporations. What about independent games, or indie games as they're called? What about those? Let's take a look at Five Nights at Freddy's as an example of an independent franchise and how it treats the fan games that come with it. So Five Nights at Freddy's, or FNAF, was released in the year 2014 by developer Scott Cawthon and has since then amassed a humongous fan base that generates a lot of fan-made content, games being no exception. Amongst these games are games like The Joy of Creation and Five Nights at Candy's, the former, which uses the same animatronic characters as those introduced by Scott Cawthon, and the latter using the mechanics as introduced by FNAF's first game, but injecting its own character and story into it. These games, you can look them up, are still available to download. So, what gives? Why are those games allowed to stay up while games like Pokemon Uranium had the lifespan of a week? Well, simply put, Scott is just a cool guy. He understands that these games are inspired by FNAF or see this kind of, mechanic or character writing or story development as amazing and want to do something like it. He allows them to use his content as an inspiration to make some of their own. As a matter of fact, he's left a comment under the same Game Theorist video I cited as inspiration, saying the following. To that end, I'd actually have to agree with Scott because further in my research, I found that it wasn't just the independent developers who were coming around to the idea of fan games, but also bigger companies that were seeing the value of these things. Valve, for example, released fan-made projects on their gaming platform Steam that were based around the contents of its Half-Life franchise. Sega took it a step further when they hired Christian Whitehead, a prominent name in the Sonic ROM hacking community, to become the lead developer of a Sega licensed game, Sonic Mania Plus. And I feel like there's something to learn here about fostering a better environment for creative individuals to share their projects without being threatened by takedowns. But this kind of behavior also ties in with what Rheingold describes as a sense of being in this world, a different sense of being in this world just by participating. Because what better way is there of gaining some kind of validation or discovering your drive than being acknowledged by the big names or companies of whose content you've been basing your work off of? It's amazing. Speaking of a different sense of being, remember how earlier in this video I mentioned Let's Plays? Well, now it's time to talk about it. This is another form of participation that encapsulates what Rheingold had spoken of as being a different sense of being in this world, because the ones recording the Let's Plays add commentary over it and post it online for everyone else to enjoy, hence the idea of a Let's Play. It's an invite to us, the viewers, to watch as they play. Both sides, the viewers and the ones recording, are contributing, they're participating. And that's interesting because it's not only the videos and the viewers themselves, but even the comment section that's filled to the brim with participation. Just by simply leaving a comment, you're a participant. So those who are adding more to it by sharing their experience, their likes, their dislikes, things that the Let's Player might have missed, they're just adding to the overall experience, making it better for everyone else, fostering discussions, fostering creativity by extension. Notable names under the Let's Play tag are PewDiePie himself, the king of YouTube, Jacksepticeye, and Markiplier. All of these three have indulged in playing fan games at some point in time. In fact, Markiplier, to date, enjoys playing FNAF-based fan games, among others on his channel, constantly promoting the games and their developers in the process. These guys playing games doesn't only encourage further participation from the fan bases to discuss and mess around in the comments, but also helps expose a large audience to the game and what comes with it as a part of the community. Doing so can further lead to people participating in more creative ways, like the aforementioned fan art, or for that matter, what was even the main focus of this video, the fan games themselves. So guys, we did it. We made it to the end of the video. I hope I was able to adequately explain what fan games are and what participation is in the gaming community and what environment they operate under. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have yourselves a good one.